welcome to our Insights podcast. I'm Leon Herzon, CEO of Value Edge Group, and also your host. I have the pleasure to have with me again, Alec Lecat. I'm saying again because we had a conversation in the past on a previous podcast, so I'm really nice to have you back. Welcome, Alec.
Thank you very much, Leon. John,
all right.
Good to be with you.
Let's start with you. Just give me a brief overview about yourself, what you have done in the past, and what you are planning for the future.
So, I'm Alec. I'm a physicist by education, trained at the EPFL, where I really enjoyed striving to understand the principles that govern the world. And after graduating, I realized that actually I was equally drawn to the applications. So this is why in 1994, I joined Nestlé. And after over 25 years, I was very privileged to work in R&D, operations, including a few years in L'Oréal, where I discovered the power of brands. And to give a bit of context, for the first 20 years, I was like a musician, learning the score, learning how you actually do science in an industry, how do you implement things. And this grounding work is really what has defined me, the way I do things, the way I think. And that has prepared me for 2014, when Nestlé asked me to join the Nutrition, Health and Wellness Program, NHW, where here I was fully committed to ensure that we won't only say nice corporate words, but actually through this program, we can actually drive impact and reconcile business with consumers. And basically, I led two key transformations. The first one, it was the external commitment that Nestlé took in terms of reducing sugars, fat, and salt in the portfolio. And from a compliance mandate, we turn into more consumer-centric approach. And the second one, it was the nutritional guidance. And here we redefine the way we have to take into account nutrition requirements in product developments. And from a one-size-fits-all model, we evolve toward an approach that will take into account the product specificities and its marketing positionings. And then in 2024, after this long, fulfilling journey, I felt the need really just to step back. I was curious to see what do we have outside and learn from the others and also share my experience. And I'm delighted, Leon, that actually you asked me to join Value Edge, and absolutely thrilled to be here with you today and to share even more.
Thank you very much. And by the way, thank you for your contribution. Also, Dr. Harold Kersner is writing a book, and you contribute with your experience. It's always nice to share knowledge. And you touch on something that I found also quite important when you mentioned that Nestlé had the goal to reduce sugar, fat, and salt. Three big worries on the food industry, right? And kudos to the company for doing that.
Yeah.
So you have a very vast experience. You mentioned your 25 years navigating that. Between strategy and execution, this is a big challenge for most companies. I have the strategy and I have to execute, right? What do you think are the key elements for success on navigating this process of strategy? Yes, we have the strategy. Execution, okay, how are we going to do that? How can you assure in large organizations or even medium-sized organizations, what are the factors for them to be successful?
Leon, that's really the key, isn't it?
That's a big question, right?
Yeah, because an idea will only be as good as its executions. So initially, you need to have a mission, because that is something that will allow you to rally people around a purpose. And that's very important, because you need to have this so that for people, whatever you want to implement, it has to be meaningful, not just an email, but something where they can identify themselves. And then, very often, when we start to do big strategies or we want to implement, we need to challenge ourselves. Are we clear where those accountability lie for this type of transformation? Because it will challenge existing models. And often, the approach that company will follow to map roles and responsibilities is to use the RACI. So the R stands for responsible, the A for accountable, the C for consulted, and the I for input. It's broader, it's very well used, this RACI model, but actually it leaves a couple of things quite critical for executing into the implicit. For instance, who is actually doing? Who is driving? Who is deciding? And I came across a different model coming from Bain and company, the RAPID, where here, actually, it's a more granular operational approach. First, you have the R, which is the recommends. It's the functions that must ensure that all base evidence are provided for the decision to be taken. And then you have the A, which is the agree, where initially Bain and Co. set it up under the umbrella of regulatory. What we've done, actually, we evolved this role as a function which has a veto, like the P&L and CapEx responsibilities, because it means that if those functions do not agree, you should not be allowed to proceed. And then comes the P, who is actually doing the job. Often it could be the same as the R, but sometimes it is not. So very, very important that you are clear on this. And then comes really, for me, the key strengths of the RAPID approach is the I. The I is the input. It means that you need to offer a forum for all the functions that will be impacted by the transformation to have a chance to first share ideas, raise their concern, and actually, feel the ownership. That's absolutely critical, because out of those space, you will allow, almost like the penny to drop for people really just to embed what it is that you want to do. Their views may not be, all the points may not be taken on board, but at least they have a chance to express themselves. And that's, Leon, in terms of defining ownership, I found it extremely, extremely important. And then, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And then you have the D, who decides. And then if you suddenly realize that you have two Ds, then you know that by design you will have challenges. So that's really the way things work. So somehow you can see that RAPID is it's an extension of RACI, but it gives more granular operational view. And that, for me, it's very, very important, because we go back, you mentioned execution strategy, and for me, as you know well, my motto really, where I'm striving, where I enjoyed helping, it's when we say execution is strategy. So how do you actually coming from the strategy to the executions? Because the execution, for me, the quality of the execution is actually how you differentiate.
Is this a RAPID approach only for large organizations, or any organization, any size can use that?
Actually, it's for all sizes. But if you're a small company, it's most natural to know exactly who does what. But when you start to have bigger companies, this is where it gets more challenging, because clarity it's not always there. And actually, what we can say is that if you want to summarize briefly, you have clarity and you have ownership. If you have clarity without ownership, you become very bureaucratic. But if you have ownership without clarity, it's a chaos. So
yeah, exactly.
for small companies, it's not so much an issue, because obviously, but if you start to be 50, 100 or located in different locations, it's very healthy, because by doing the rapid, you're forced to map who does what. And that's actually pretty important.
Doing those very interesting in doing these business transformations, Alec, what normally works and what normally fails, in why that happens? Because I think our viewers here and our listeners, I think they understand the rapid, but they also want to, and I'm very interested to know, what is the main challenge people have, and that usually they fail on that, and what usually works better?
So you need first to realize that you have the plan, but actually the complexity will start when you start the transformation of the program, because execution is dynamic. So the first thing, and here we need to acknowledge that we are only covering the top of the iceberg, because you have so many things. But what I'm hoping is that we really cover some of the key foundations to have in place as a prerequisite. So the first thing, you need to ensure that all the effort that you spent in defining rapid, the cross-functional ownership, will remain once the kickoff meeting has taken place. Very, very important. The second is also that your governance that you've built, it means something to people. It's not just a slide. It's something that people will really follow. And then you need also to, from the beginning, to be very humble. Yes, you may have worked very hard with your team to define what's something that you believe it's pretty good, pretty robust, but you need to allow to have feedback loop very early, because things will change, and it's impossible to be able to plan 100%. Things will change, evolve without you really knowing. So you need to allow this feedback loop so that you can adapt and ensuring that you will still just deliver. And also, what I found extremely useful is that you should not treat your transformation as one big project. Let me give you an example. It should not be seen like an aircraft carrier, but much more like a fleet of boats, so that you can adapt and you can respond to different challenges when they come. Somehow, this is the philosophy of the Agile. This is really this ability to be able just to anticipate.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. A business transformation has a very large project, and you're showing us that's not how you better deal with that. So maybe that's one of the reasons for fail, is that people think, well, that's a very large project, there's no variation, no changes, and then they're going to fail?
Actually, now if you go on the failure, definitely what you mentioned, it's extremely valid. But the first thing is also mistaking alignment for engagement. It's not because I align with you, Leon, that I'm fully engaged with you. So that's something to be very mindful. The other part is also that if you meet resistance, that you feel or you sense that it will fade. No. If you meet resistance, it means that something is not clear, because at the end of the day, we're all working for the same company. Someone is not doing it. It means something is unclear. So making sure just to address.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Then, as I say, if you go back to the humility, let's build something simple. As a scientist, you always want to have the 100% right. No. Let's target the 80% right, And afterwards, when that works, we can evolve to go to the 85, 90, but slowly but surely. And last but not least, it's very important, is the communication. You have to be able to modulate on your communications. If you want to do a deck of slides, which sometimes you may need, you cannot have only one deck. You cannot have only one message. Depending to whom you talk, you need to adapt your language. You need to adapt all your communications to make sure that it resonates. Because while the purpose is the same for everybody, the way people will be impacted will be different. But ultimately, what comes, the gap between work and failure for me can come to this. What I do, is it something that people will feel imposed, or is it something that actually they will own? It's not just perceptions, but it makes a whole difference. Because once you have that, then you can really start to work. And then obviously comes the underpinning everything is the right values to drive. You need to ensure that all the team, we have this culture of holding each other accountable if something is not done. We need to ensure also that the leader will always provide the energies or the harmony if needed, or decide if it's requested. This is why leadership and trust are absolutely fundamental. But it comes through making sure not impose, by understanding that this is a way just to proceed.
Very nice. Thank you. So one aspect that I think we didn't explore here, and I was thinking about that, is the importance of data, right? Because I assume that doesn't matter what type of business transformation you're trying to do, data is crucial, at least in my perspective, right? Because with bad data, you might make bad decisions. And can you elaborate a little bit on your perspective? How much data is one of the factors behind a transformation success?
Yes, because Leon, as you know, data-driven decision-making seems pretty obvious. You will not find anyone or any leaders who will tell you, I'm not interested in data. But when we have data, first, we need to ensure that we have data that is reliable. It means that you need to be very clear on the governance of this data, meaning who owns the data, who maintains the data.
Who owns, who maintains, okay.
And the change, if some changes have to be made, how those changes will happen. And that's something absolutely critical, because it is expensive in the sense that you need people to work on it. And that's not something that you can proudly put under the limelight, saying that, look, this is the way I go. But this legwork is absolutely fundamental, because without it, whatever you build, it will, if it's not there, it will be very, very fragile. And as a program manager or a project leader, your job is obviously to ensure that you provide all the data for the steerco with your recommendation for decision to be taken. Fair enough. Sometimes your recommendation may not be followed because there will be other elements that you are not aware above your pay grade, but at least you've done your job. But Leon, sometimes you cannot provide data to steerco because, and this is the other part which is very, very challenging, sometimes the data will actually challenge some long-held belief of key functions that you have in transformations. And that you need really to be very, very sensitive on this. And you need really to take the time to go to see those functions. So it means that you need really to understand exactly what it is you want to do, how you want to do it, and be aware about the history.
So you have some stakeholder management on that as well, right?
It's absolutely, absolutely critical. But it's stakeholder management in the sense, conversations, to explain what you're doing and try to make them realize that their long-held belief was right, but things have evolved and they were not necessarily aware. And this is this culture of accepting it, but it will take time. Do not underestimate it. But this is absolutely critical, because it's when you have that, then you can start really just to have your steer code to be able to take an informed decision. It's not necessarily data-driven, but it's fully informed. And for me, if you have that in place, it's actually a very good power things to have for the transformation to proceed.
Yeah, so Alec, you mentioned in a previous conversation we had, right, and we talk about data, something that you call one source of truth, right? OSOT, one source of truth. Can you explain a little bit more about this approach, especially nowadays where people are arguing, oh, I have my own truth, no, what is the truth? And so how can we manage this type of approach that can help the business transformation?
As you know, since 2014, we've entered into digital revolutions. And now with the rise of AI, it keeps increasing. And we have data and more data. And there is always this pressure that I want to have more data. And for here, what I will focus, it's on the internal data and not external data, because this is really where I have experience. But prior to collecting more and more data, the first question you need to ask yourself is, am I really using fully those data? Because remember what we discussed previously. If you want data, the data has to be reliable. It means you need to have governance in place. It means that you have people maintaining it. So it is expensive. So prior to collecting even more data, you need to make sure that you fully understand the scope of the breadth of the data that you have. And for this to illustrate, let me give you an example. When we started the commitment, the Nestlé commitment, reporting was absolutely critical, as you can imagine. And as a practical starting point back in 2014, Excel was a natural choice.
Yeah.
But when you go like that, clearly you realize that if 95% of your NNS is outside Switzerland, working with Excel clearly will have some limits. First, the credibility. If you start just to have Excel file more than 100,000 lines, mistakes are inevitable.
Yeah.
And then those spreadsheets, as you can imagine, we're not going to ask once, but we need to receive data quite a few times per week or per month. So who will do this? Then it will be people in the factories or in the markets. But surely, there must be a better use of the time that they're filling a massive Excel sheets. So we were really a bit blocked until someone from the team reminded us what was our DNA, the Nestlé DNA. It is actually to produce products that are safe, compliant, and loved by consumers. But surely to do this, we must have data. And what came across is that those data actually are the same one as the one that we need to have for the reporting. So we started to investigate where are all those data. And we came to realize that actually those data, they were fragmented. They were a bit everywhere in different Excel, different pieces. So absolutely not a way just to a sustainable approach. And in 2015, which I think was really a fantastic commitment and a culture shift, what the company did following our recommendations is that we said for the reporting, we will only be using the data that are used for produce products.
Okay.
It means that we had just to really start just to investigate, to convince people to understand exactly who needs those data, where are those data, have the central locations, map the access, map the governance. So it took quite some time, but very, very powerful, because at the end of the day, we end up having one source of truth where the data is here, and we're all using the same. And then when you have that, when come discussions and difficult discussions in meetings, suddenly people will not tell you, I'm not sure about your data. No, the data will never questions. Then we can really start to discuss, okay, these are the data. What are we going to do with this? And that's really how you can start just to unlock real execution at scale. It's through these combinations.
So one source of truth is equal to one source of data based on what you're saying, because before that, you had people looking for information in very different sources. And now the work that you have to do was, okay, let's select what is the source and make sure that people only go to that source instead of going to a bunch of other sources, right?
Exactly. And you can imagine, it's also something very important, you can imagine the change management that we have just put in place to ensure that people will understand, because it's so much, let's be very transparent to each other, it's so much easier to have everything in your Excel file on your computer.
Yes.
But then you need to explain just to people, look, do the effort. Yes, initially it will cost you, but look what you will gain. And once you put this in place, it's always these explanations, what's in for me, linked to your purpose. Because at the end of the day, we all work for the same company, we all want the same. But we need to acknowledge that we are humans, and sometimes we need more time for things just to progress, but definitely. But it took some time.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about innovation. Without innovation, companies die, right? So every company, doesn't matter the size, they have to innovate, they have to adjust to the times. Is it a true statement based on what we are talking here that when you do a business transformation, you need to keep in mind how to assure that that organization will keep innovation as a key element so they can survive, especially if you consider nowadays where things are so fast changing, right?
Innovation, it's such a buzzword. Everybody is talking about breakthrough innovation, disruptive innovations. I mean, you name it. I'm not even sure that people know exactly the difference between all those things, but that's not really the debate. For me, innovations, to ensure that we all agree, we need to define it. So for me, the innovation will be the identifications of the territory where there's a need for consumer benefits. It is not yet provided, and that the consumer is prepared to pay for it. So when you have that, that's really how you can do innovation. But if you think about these definitions, you need to realize that we're talking about benefits. It should not be necessarily focused on the product itself. It can actually be linked to the way we're going just to engage with the product, or the way we will experience our use of the products. And for this also, let me give you another very good examples. When I worked in L'Oréal and I was the head of manufacturing and procurement for nutritional supplement beauty, we had a product that just to improve the quality of hair. The science was perfect, was working very, very well, we knew, and yet the product was not selling. And then we're asking, how come? And then, by investigating, we realized that actually the consumer was buying the product, but after 6, 7, 8 weeks, didn't see any benefits, so stopped buying it. Yes, because for the benefits to see, you needed to have the product for at least 2 months. And one of the biggest breakthrough innovation that came, it was when the marketing colleague said, okay, in that case, we're not going to sell one product, we're going to sell a treatment of 3 months or 4 months. Mm-hmm. I know, Leon, you can say, Alec, it's pretty obvious. Pretty obvious? Maybe. But after, if you remember what we discussed earlier on, quality of the executions is the way you differentiate. And to prepare the treatment, we have to ensure that the packaging, as soon as the consumer saw the packaging, The packaging will speak to the consumer, for the consumer to come to the packaging. You have to ensure that when you touch the packaging was conveying quality and intentions to the consumers. It was very, very challenging to do, but here the quality of the education is what makes the difference. Once we did that, then obviously the product was selling and it was a massive hit. But for me, it was extremely interesting, especially coming from R&D and more from a food and beverage company prior to be in the consumer goods. I always thought innovation as a product itself. I never realized that actually it's not just the product, it's also how you interact with the product. And that through the brand, you have a fabulous way of conveying messages. To illustrate this, you may have the same benefits coming from a product, but you can enjoy it through different manners. And here again, a fantastic example is with L'Oréal. If you take La Roche-Posay and Vichy, some products actually are delivering the same benefits. But if you are a La Roche-Posay client, then for you it's very sober, almost clinical. So you can feel that almost you are with a doctor and then you have something doing good for you. If you go for the Vichy, it's completely different. It's a moment for you in your bathroom, in front of your mirror. You have fantastic emulsions. You have some perfume, and you're enjoying yourself. Two different benefits that works because the link to the brand. And that's something that when we do innovation, we don't far too often too much to the product. We need to think about the story. We need to think about the brand. How does it fit? And try to think more globally with what does it mean for the consumer.
Well, I like very much what you just said. Innovation is not only about the product, but about the story. I think that's a powerful statement. Because what is the story that you want to tell? Doesn't matter if you are on product, service. What is the story, right, that you wanted to convey? How are you packaging the story that not necessarily you're talking about a product, but the message, right? And how you want to convey that. Thank you. And I think I would like to have a follow-up conversation with you, Alec. I don't want to cut our conversation short, but instead of that, that's part one. Let's do part two soon enough. But I still have a few questions for you. One, of course, is how you see AI impacting everything that we are talking about. Business transformation, we talk about rapid, we talk about stakeholders, we talk about the importance of change, we talk about several aspects on innovation. How does AI fit in your perspective? Because that's what our clients and our colleagues are trying to transform their business going to go through, right?
Thank you for this, because for me, AI is the biggest opportunity that we can possibly have. Because AI, if you do not have content, AI will drive you nuts, will go anywhere. But if you have content, what I have experienced is that AI actually, and I've seen it, has made me a much more effective person, because I focused really on the content, not so much on the shape. AI is outstanding to provide the different shapes, but if you do not have the right content or you're not clear, that will not fly. So for me, I see AI as a very powerful ally, and I know it is very scary because people feel, and I was the first one, that, okay, we may lose a job. Absolutely not. The job is evolving, and we need to embrace changes. And look, I'm 59, and it's if I do not embrace, I'm dead. But for me, it's really fabulous. Initially, yes, very skeptical, but then you need to realize it is really working, and it makes you a much more effective leader. And that's really, so to go back, AI, it's really a tool. For me, it's very important to remember, it's a tool to help you. you need to have a clear purpose for AI. If you do not have it, and we know if you ask AI to tell you business transformation, it will tell you all the things I need to do, but so what? That will not work. But then if you go to say, that's what I want to do, this is really the thing. Help me. What are the steps that I need to do to ensure that I will tackle all the different challenges that different functions have? You can do that on your own. Yes, so you will spend half a day. Or with AI, because you need to make sure that you fully understand what you're doing. And then AI provides you the answer, and you converge. You do 3, 4, 5, 6 cycles, and you get something, remember, 80% good, and that's what we want. Nothing more.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, 1 or 2 books that you would like to recommend to our viewers and listeners here that were important for you. I always like to ask that question because there's a lot of people who love to read good stuff, and then what can you recommend?
Okay, so I haven't read that many books, but there are a couple who actually really just have helped me to evolve and guide me in my career. Okay, the first one, unfortunately, I cannot remember the name. It was written by a former US Marines, and he gave us a lecture, and he said, true leadership is when the commander tells his team that we should go against a wall heavily defended by gunfire. And when he says we go, everybody follows and go. And for me, now if you put in different contexts, the revelation was that being a leader does not mean being liked. Being a leader means that you need to be trusted, that the team trusts you. So if
Trust is a factor.
If we apply this to the context of today, it means that even in time of uncertainties, you need to ensure that the team will follow you, that will trust you. And that's very, very important. And then the other one is absolutely no link to business. It's a novel written by Tim Powers called The Stress of Her Regard. And it's all about the life of British poets, the Lord Byron, John Keats, Percy Shelley, and they're having some adventures on the Lemon Lake. And it's dark, strange, nothing to do with business, as I mentioned. It's about creativity, obsessions, and the cost of brilliance. And for me, it has helped me, because sometimes when you push boundaries, you realize things are not black and white. Things can be very, very gray. But here again, if you have the right values, then this is your compass. And out with this compass, you can actually go back and you know how to progress. So those two things have really helped me just to build the type of person that I am, and also to ensure that when I do something, I like to ensure that it will endure, because it's the fun of it. It's not building something that not to last. You want to be something that once you're gone, remains.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. Final words for our listeners, and again, for everybody here, this is part 1. We're going to have part 2 with Alec, because we don't want to stay here for more than 1 hour. And we have so much to talk about, Alec, and again, I appreciate you being here. But give us your final thoughts based on what we just talked today to our viewers and listeners.
For me, I would say that don't confuse clarity with control. You need, prior to move, you need to ensure that everybody is very clear on what it is you want to do. And you need also to acknowledge that it will take time. That sometimes people need time just to understand what you want to do. In English, sometimes we say the penny drops, seems to be a bit pejorative, but absolutely not. It just means that give the time really for people really to understand. And once you have it, okay, make sure that you can move rapidly with focus and courage. Then the second thing, which for me is something that we tend just to forget, we're talking about leadership. But if you ask really what is the definition of leadership, I mean, you can have thousands of them. For me, the one which actually embed all of them, it's really the one that the London Business School says, that leadership is the ability that you have for people to follow you willingly. And the key word here is willing you, not by fear, because I'm prepared to follow you. And for this, it means that to create those conditions, you need to ensure that the team feels that you are developing them, that you are growing them. It means that sometimes you have to let them to step in and to do things. And yes, sometimes they will not do the things the way you wanted. But at the end of the day, they've done their ways, the message was passed, so do not come and say, oh, da-da-da. Yes, but say, fantastic, well done, because you build really the conditions really for them just to follow you. And once you have that, when you create this trust, but then, Leon, the sky is your limit. There is no limit. And the last thing, which today, in the world where we live, which for me is the most important thing, especially for the young starting, is that don't ever forget that the aim is not to shine. The goal is to build something that endures.
Thank you so much, Alec. Really appreciate that. I'm very excited because we're going to have a chance to talk again. And actually, if anybody wants to connect with you, you are on LinkedIn. Please, guys, connect with Alec. He has so much experience on business transformation and using a very practical and effective approach. So thank you again, Alec. Really appreciate our chat.
No, thank you, Leon. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to share.
See you next time.
See you next time.